Hi, folks. Good morning. Welcome. We're very excited to have you. We are going to start in a sec. I think we're going to give folks a minute to join, and then we'll get started. Monique, will you be screen sharing for us?
Yes, I will.
Would you mind starting the screen share? And because we're recording, we will be able to get started. If folks trickle in, we can always circle back at the end.
Yeah, and I
Um,
will trim from the recording. So,
Fantastic. We love that. All right. So this is a member orientation. Some members join as new members, others choose to kind of get updated and acquainted with the network in
oh,
this way. Yes.
sorry.
Okay. So because we are recording this session, we're going to ask that you keep your questions to the end. We will stop the recording at that point or cut the recording at that point because we will use this as a resource on our website for the members area, which we'll explain during the presentation. And so if you have any questions and you want to pop them in the chat, I won't answer them live, or we won't answer them live, but we can have a conversation after we've gone through the slides. We just want to make sure that we reserve the slide portion so that we can cut it for those who were unable to be here, but still would like to listen to the presentation. All right, and we can perhaps also do a round of introduction actually before we begin. I think that would be nice. So as we begin, my name is Tiffany. I currently serve as the chair of the Women, Peace and Security Network. I'm currently based, I'm usually based on Treaty 1 territory. Today I am on the territory of Tsawwassen First Nation out in British Columbia. And I come as an individual member, so I don't belong to an affiliated organization. Um, Perhaps we can continue on. I see on my screen Samantha, if you'd like to introduce yourself so we can be acquainted with who's on the call.
Hi there. Well, thank you for having this session. So I'm actually not a new member. I've been probably with the membership since about 2017. But because I'm not directly working within Women, Peace, and Security, I'd like to just throw my hat in and see where I can help and what I can do to support. My academic interest will always be in Women, Peace, and Security and how that impacts the Canadian military. So I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts. And I currently work in it's like a hybrid startup insurance company. So it's nothing to do with women, peace, and security, but I do as much as I can support women's initiatives. So that's really important to me. So that's where I am, and I'm currently in Toronto.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here and glad to have you. I see Haley next on my screen.
Hi everyone, I'm Haley. I'm a member from an organization, so Canada. We do recruitment and deployment for UN humanitarian missions. So I'm a member on behalf of Canada along with one of my colleagues. But personally, have an academic background in development and women's and gender studies. So um, I'm here as an organization, but also very interested personally, and I am based in Ottawa. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad you're here. Imogen.
Hi everyone, great to be here. My name's Imogen. I am an organizational member representing the Canadian Coalition for Youth, Peace and Security. So I think we've been a member for a long time, but I'm now the representative. And yeah, I think I'm here to help us maintain and keep up our synergies between women peace and security and youth peace and security, which are really important in Canada. And I am based in Montreal on the unceded territory of the Mohawk Nation.
Thank you, Imogen. Wonderful. I see Denise.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm Denise Coe. I'm a public and occupational health physician, and yeah, I'm basically representing myself and my own organization, MedResRx.
Wonderful. And Denise is a member of our steering committee. Gezo.
Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here among you. My name is Ghazal Habibir, and I am based in Ottawa. I work in human rights, women's rights issues. I'm originally from Afghanistan, so my focus is pretty much on Afghanistan, but otherwise, also a role of women peacekeepers and security. I'm also doing my PhD in gender and feminism at University of Ottawa. I am not representing any organization. I'm here in an individual capacity. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. We're glad you're here. And last but not least, Alana.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alana Livesey. I'm the lead for gender equality and inclusion at Plan International Canada. So we are members as an organization. We have programming experience in peace and security, children in armed conflict, engaging women and girls and empowerment and agency, etc. So we are a new member. So I'm looking forward to learning more and participating. Lovely to meet all of you, and thank you.
Excellent. We're so glad to have Plan with us. And I see Maliha, who's just joined us. Maliha, we're just introducing ourselves. If you'd like to introduce yourself as well.
Hello. Thank you so much. This is Maliha. So um, last week I saw Monique's email that it's just an orientation for the members. So I wanted to join to see. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Glad to have you all here. I'm going to jump right into the orientation. So again, thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have you all as returning and some of you new members to the Women, Peace and Security Network Canada. For the sake of the recording, I am introducing myself again. My name is Katrina Leclerc. I currently serve as chair of the Women, Peace and Security Network. We will explain throughout the presentation what that means and how that is different or not different from the steering committee, which is the governance body of our network. And so if we can continue with the next slide, we can dive right into what the Women, Peace and Security Network is. And first and foremost, what the Women, Peace and Security Network is its members. And so we are a volunteer-driven network and we like to see ourselves almost as a platform for individuals and organizations across the country who work on issues of women, peace and security, and come together to coordinate advocacy efforts and monitor the Government of Canada's actions. So we currently have, and this is always a fluctuating number, but we currently have 69 members, so 43 individuals and 26 organizational members of our network from across the country, coast to coast to coast. Here you have a visual of most of the organizational members that are currently in our membership. Some of you may recognize your own logos. And so we're really excited to continue to grow the membership and to continue to facilitate space for dialogue among civil society leaders. If we look at the next slide, we have the structure of the organization. And so the organization is structured in kind of 3 or 4 different ways. So first, the current bylaws of the organization, and this may change because we have set up in the last year and a half a governance working group. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the current bylaws of the organization has 2 governance mechanisms. The first is the board of directors. And then there is a steering committee, which is essentially voted, both of them are voted at our annual general assembly to decide on the governance of the organization, oversee the organization. As I've mentioned, it is a volunteer-driven organization. Therefore, both the board and the steering committee are volunteers who step up either through their organizational affiliations or as individuals to run for election for appointment in both bodies at the annual general meeting. Then we also have a network coordinator, which is our only paid individual within the network who contributes immensely, but nonetheless only 3 days a week of paid time, which is currently Monique, who you all know and have met in various capacities. The network coordinator reports back and coordinates directly with the steering committee. And we have created now 4 years ago an ombudsperson role. And so this is an attempt to increase conflict resolution methods and prevention methods for the organization, and more transparency in our governance functions. And so the ombudsperson role has been established as an independent entity outside of the steering committee, outside of the board, that serves as a mediation kind of oversight, let's say. If we look at the more of the specifics of the different components of our structure for the board of directors, again, this may change in the coming months. There is a proposal from the governance working group that will be coming forward soon to membership to see if we merge the concept of the board of directors and the steering committee. As of now, as of May 2026, it is still separate as a governing entity. And so the board of directors is the legal representation that has been reported to Corporations Canada and to CRA to demonstrate, the governance of the network. It oversees the responsibility technically of the bylaws, but under our bylaws, the board of directors has delegated the authority of the everyday managerial tasks and oversight of the network to the steering committee. Hence why many many are recommending that we merge both functions, because it gives the impression that the board of directors is a bit absolute. So we will be discussing this within the membership in the coming weeks. If we look at the actual steering committee itself, which is the current body that very much does the everyday work of overseeing the network, of coordinating efforts, of overseeing finances, you see that there is a 2026 steering committee. And so the steering committee is elected every year at the AGM. Our annual general meeting typically occurs at the end of February or early March. According to our bylaws, it has to happen within the first quarter of the calendar year. And we are appointed / nominated and then elected on 1-year terms. So the current steering committee, the 2026 steering committee, was elected on March 3rd, and you have the list of different members. So we have 7 individual members and organizational affiliates who serve on the steering committee for this year. We can have up to 8 individuals on the steering committee. There are few but some requirements for individuals who wish to sit on the steering committee. They have to have been a member for 1 full year, so 1 calendar year from the date of their membership to the network, and have participated in at least 3 different activities of the network. That can be a monthly meeting, that can be a working group meeting, that can be another initiative, but to be able to demonstrate that they have engaged, of course, with the network in a way that would allow them to be a little bit more familiar with the network once they become a member of the steering committee. The steering committee basically coordinates the work, as I've said, of the WPSNC. It includes liaising with the Government of Canada, because one of our primary mandate roles is to monitor what the government does, but also engage with the Government of Canada on their implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda and its commitments to the agenda. We also, at the steering committee level, look for fundraising initiatives. And so, for example, one of the steering committee members chairs a finance committee that is open to membership, but of course, by default, members of the steering committee are members of that finance committee and do the financial oversight of the network. We build other initiatives, oversee working groups, although not all steering committee members need to oversee a working group, and not all working groups need to be overseen by a steering committee member. And overall, one of our main roles is that we coordinate the staffing of the network. So, for example, our relationship with the network coordinator, which I believe is next on my slide. Wonderful. I'm actually going to prompt Monique here, because this is Monique's role, and I would love, Monique, for you to tell us a little bit more about what you do in your capacity as network coordinator.
Thank you, Katrina. Hi, everybody. So I'm Monique. I'm the coordinator. I have met all of you over email at least. So I am, as Katrina said, the only paid staff of the network on an ongoing basis, and I take care of the administrative, financial, and technical support that the steering committee requires to sort of function on a day-to-day basis. It is a part-time 3-day-a-week position, but I don't work 3 full days each week. It's, the equivalent of 3 days spread out over the week in order to accommodate the network's meetings and events and so forth. I am sort of the main point of contact for members for any questions you might have, any problems you may be encountering. I can, sort of put you in the right direction. As I said, so I do take care of the administrative. I take the notes at all meetings. I support the website and all of that sort of thing. So that is my work. You can always email me at coordinator@wpsn-canada.org, an email address you should all have because as I say, you've all been in contact with me. So I'll go on. As Katrina mentioned before, we also have an ombudsperson. The current ombudsperson is Dr. Julie Cormack. Julie was elected at the most recent AGM. The position is a 2-year term, nominated and voted for every other year at the AGM. There are further details on our website. This is a process that is open to both members and non-members, so that is a public-facing web page. And so this position was developed out of conversations that the Anti-Racism Working Group originally had several years, I guess over 4 years ago now, 5 years ago now, that resulted in the suggestion that it would be beneficial to the network to, in our striving to be inclusive and accountable, to have like a specific path for people to raise any issues and concerns, to have this set process that people can engage with if there are any issues. And that resulted in the establishment of the position of volunteer ombudsperson. Zoe DeGal from CanADEM was the ombudsperson for 2 2-year terms. And yes, and now it is Julie. So just to review the governance that Katrina alluded to earlier, we have a set of bylaws which are currently under review. They were originally established in 2019. So it is a good time to be reviewing and looking to see if they still meet the needs of the organization. They are being reviewed by the Governance Working Group, which was established last year to look at different aspects of the organization's governance. Each year there is an annual general meeting, but there are also more informal monthly network meetings every month except for July and August. And these are more casual. We don't have minutes from those meetings. We have notes, but they provide an opportunity for all members to get together every month to find out what is being done within the network, to contribute what they are doing. And of course, the next meeting is this afternoon at 1 p.m. Eastern. And I believe I'm going to turn this back over to you now, Katrina.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Monique. Yes, I will jump back in. And so, of course, a network is not a network without a raison d'être. And so our raison d'être, our reason for being, is the Women, Peace and Security agenda. And the engagements with the Government of Canada and how Canada's obligations translate into policy action. So the network, we'll talk about the history of the network, the way the network has come to be in a moment, but the network positions itself around the Women, Peace and Security framework and how Canada has contextualized it within our federal politics primarily. So we have not traditionally engaged with other layers of jurisdiction, primarily federal politics, or the federal system. And so we engaged on the first National Action Plan. A National Action Plan is essentially a government document that outlines commitments and policy coherence, ideally, across a variety of topics that fall under an umbrella, the umbrella being Women, Peace and Security in this case. And so we have engaged with all 3 National Action Plans on Women, Peace and Security with increasing engagement throughout the different iterations of our National Action Plan. In the photo here, you see our most recent National Action Plan. We call it the CNAP 3, so Canada's National Action Plan 3rd iteration, which is in effect from 2023 to 2029. We were actually paid by Global Affairs Canada back in 2022 to co-organize all of the civil society engagements. We did not call them consultations, we called them dialogues around how civil society was seeing women, peace, and security emerging in different areas of life as Canadians, both through a domestic lens, but also through our engagements abroad. And so part of the result of some of these engagements was the co-creation of this National Action Plan, keeping in mind it is a government document, but nonetheless, the contributions of civil society were very much integrated in various aspects of the development of the plan. And we welcomed that plan in March of 2023. The plan in itself is a very interesting one because it brings in a plethora of different areas that intersect with women, peace, and security. But one of the major factors that we like to focus on or highlight in this context is the fact that as Canada's leadership has evolved over the years on women, peace, and security, so has our national action plans. And this national action plan now has 10 different government departments, 10 or 11 different government departments. I may be wrong with my 10, maybe 11. But nonetheless, several different government departments have signed on and developed department-specific plans on women, peace, and security. So how I like to visualize it is, again, the idea of an umbrella, which is our national action plan, which is managed primarily by Global Affairs Canada, but signed on by the ministers of all of the departments who have added themselves as signatories. And so they agree to the main plan, which is the umbrella, and each area of all of the departments under this umbrella have their own specific mandate-related department plans. And so you see we have Global Affairs, which is the main coordinator, that they also have a department-specific action plan. There is the Department of National Defense and the Canadian Armed Forces. They have a department-specific action plan on women, peace, and security that relates back to our national action plan. We have Immigration, Refugees, and Citizenship Canada. We have Justice Canada. We have the RCMP. We have Public Safety, Women and Gender Equality Canada, the two Indigenous Services, and Crown Indigenous Relations departments, and Veterans Affairs Canada, who has been a new addition in this third iteration of the National Action Plan. Canada is among the only, if not the only country that does this in this way for their National Action Plan in terms of structure of having this umbrella plan and then department-specific plans to contextualize even further their commitments and how it relates back to their mandate. And so it has been almost a trial within the women, peace, and security space to see if this is an effective way to contextualize and put into effect the action plan itself. So that's one thing that we've been highlighting and trying to observe specifically, and it gives us an opportunity as the network and members to engage differently with the different departments who have their own mandated plans and who have demonstrated concrete interest in women, peace, and security commitments from both policy to then practice. The other thing that the National Action Plan does is have annual progress reports and a midterm review. We are currently waiting the tabling in Parliament of the first two progress reports for 2023 and 2024, which are expected, we hope, by the end of June before Parliament rises in June of 2026. This has been previously things that we have engaged on in terms of our own publication analyses that we produce. I'll talk about that in a moment, or different engagements directly with different ministries. We also are co-chair of what we call the WPS Advisory Group. So as the network, I chair on behalf of our network, as the chair of our network, the WPS Advisory Group with representatives of Global Affairs Canada as the main coordinator of the National Action Plan. And all of the different department signatories are members of that advisory group, and our civil society network is a member. So we host, and in previous years, we have hosted bi-yearly meetings of this advisory group. We will be hosting our next advisory group meeting at the end of June. And the topic in itself will be discussed at our next working group meeting on the topic, which I'll talk about in a moment, but we will be having a meeting internally within our network to discuss what priorities civil society wants to bring forward at that meeting with our government counterparts. The other part of Canada and Women, Peace and Security from a broader standpoint, not specifically to the National Action Plan, is that our network was instrumental in advocating several years ago, pre-2019, for the creation of an official ambassadorial office and position on women, peace, and security. And so this came out of collaboration with members of parliament on both sides of the House and the Senate to be able to bring forward a motion that would allow the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time, Chrystia Freeland, to create the office of a Women, Peace, and Security Ambassador and appoint, at the time, Jacqueline O'Neill as the first Women, Peace, and Security Ambassador for Canada. Jackie's term was renewed twice, and so she finished her mandate in March of 2025. Since then, the position has been vacant. We received, of course, this public notice, or we witnessed the public announcement that Minister Anita Anand, the current Minister of Foreign Affairs, about 2 weeks ago in late April, announced that she would be appointing a new ambassador in the role and filling the vacancy. And so we are currently awaiting eagerly for that appointment, which we hope will happen before this summer. And we continue to engage with Global Affairs Canada to be abreast of the information that will be becoming available, essentially, about the appointment of that office. In the previous iteration of that mandate, when it was Jacqueline O'Neill, we were having quarterly meetings with the ambassador to be able to continue the close relationship with that ambassador's office. At the time, her second mandate meant that there was an oversight and advisory position where she was engaging with all of the different signatory partners of the National Action Plan. This new mandate may not have the same the same scope, but it is something that we have to keep in mind and that we may need to try and nudge, let's say, Global Affairs to support the continuation of advisory kind of role that the ambassador played. And of course, the ambassador played a very significant role in terms of the relationship that the WPS government partners had vis-a-vis civil society. If we look at the history of the network, how we came to be, I'm actually going to prompt Monique again because I have been a member of the network since I left government in 2020. And so I only have the last 6 years of the network's history in my own lived experience. But Monique, we're very lucky to have with us, has been a member for quite some time, and I believe from the very beginning. So I'm going to pass it over to Monique.
Thank you, Katrina. Yeah, so I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of how we came to be here. Before WPSNC existed, there were other civil society WPS networks. In the early 2000s, in response to UN Security Council Resolution 1325, there was the development of a Canadian Committee on WPS that included government participation. That existed for a while. I have been around for a long time, but not quite that long. But following the dissolution of that group, the organization Peace Build had a working group on gender and peace building, which became the WPS civil society platform at the time. I did attend some of those meetings. I previously worked for another organization that was also involved in WPS. Peace Build lost their federal funding, which was supporting the organization as a whole and their peace building working group in particular in 2011 under the Harper government, when there was a lot of that going on with civil society organizations, particularly in our sector. As a result of Peace Build losing that funding and being unable to support the working group, people who had been involved in it wanted to, continue to organize and advocate around WPS, and had an initial meeting to discuss what that might look like in February 2012. And to give appropriate credit, that was really the result of Beth Warniak's work in bringing people together and really pushing that to discuss what we could do and what that would look like. For the next 7 years, we existed as a fairly casual organization without membership dues, with a steering committee, but without much else in the way of structure, although we did have regular meetings throughout that period and a website. In 2019, we had by that time had a couple of contracts with Global Affairs around the development of the second National Action Plan in 2017 and so forth, that were being managed by member organizations on the network's behalf and that sort of thing. And then there was a conversation about next steps for the network as we sort of developed this expertise and this, sort of more formal participation in the process with Global Affairs. As a result of that and conversations within the network membership, we incorporated as a nonprofit in 2019. That sort of continued, and I was hired as the first and only coordinator in 2020. Once we had sort of stable, to some degree, not entirely stable, but some income to pay somebody on an ongoing basis. We celebrated our 10th anniversary in 2022, which seems like it was very recent, but obviously was not. And now here we are today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Monique. If we go to the next slide, as we've said before, our mandate is specific to promoting and monitoring the efforts of the Canadian government in their commitments to implement the Women, Peace and Security resolutions of the Security Council. If we keep in mind that the Security Council resolutions, starting with 1325 in October of 2000, and now 10 resolutions later, which make up the framework of what we call Women, Peace and Security, this comes as a result of the advocacy of civil society, some of which were Canadians, many of which were from conflict-affected countries across the world in the mid to late 1990s. And what was strategic really of that advocacy that came to the Security Council and then became a resolution was the fact that every single government, regardless of their seat on the Security Council or not, is mandated and required by the UN Charter to implement the resolutions of the Security Council and uphold them. And so that means Canada, although we were actually sitting, that was the last time we had a seat on the Security Council, we were sitting on the Security Council and voted in favor of Resolution 1325, regardless of if we had had a seat, we would have been legally obliged under international law to uphold and respect and implement the resolutions nonetheless. And so 1325 was born in October 2000. It creates the framework of Women, Peace and Security with these four main pillars that we often talk about: participation, protection, prevention, relief and recovery, of different ways that women experience conflict in peaceful times, and how member states, really governments, have responsibilities vis-a-vis the experiences of women and how women can contribute to peace and peace building in various communities. So all of this is the basis of how we approach our mandate. Our mandate is to make sure that the Government of Canada upholds its commitments and its responsibilities to international law, and also its commitment to women, peace, and security from a broader standpoint. And then, of course, a secondary, but nonetheless just as important mandate that the network has is to create and be a platform, a forum of exchange among civil society on issues that relate back to women, peace, and security. That's why you see that we often will hold different public events on areas that touch on women, peace, and security. That's also why we facilitate ongoing conversations within our network. That's why we create working groups, for example, on specific thematic areas to be able to create and facilitate these exchanges among our membership. Here you see kind of a little bit of an overview of more recent photos of initiatives our network have undertaken, or opportunities of engagement among members and with government officials, both from the elected and appointed houses of parliament and also from the diplomatic corps and bureaucracy of our governments. If we move on to the next slide, how we operate. So most of our work is actually done by the network members itself. As you've heard, Monique is the only paid person who is part of this network on a 3-day basis. Much of that is work that is absolutely critical, and she keeps us very much organized, and we very much appreciate Monique But the substantive work, a lot of the network has to come from members themselves. And so often you'll hear in certain meetings members proposing activities and proposing initiatives, and of course, then undertaking a lot of the preparation work in coordination with members of the steering committee. We have initiatives that are led and organized directly by members. For example, we have an upcoming film screening on Sudan, which is led by our members. Monique has been coordinating directly with them to support the coordination of that film screening on the situation in Sudan, for example, but it has been coordinated almost entirely by the members themselves. Any member is welcome to submit initiatives, request the network to co-sponsor an event. If you are hosting something or coordinating something and you would like the network itself to coordinate, of course, there needs to be approval of the steering committee to do this. But you can also always use the listserv and send out an email saying, hey, we're organizing an event. Would anyone like to co-host or participate, etc.? All of that is kind of the purpose of our network in terms of being a platform for coordination and exchange. Since July of 2020, we've had Monique. Before that, it was even more organic. Now we have a little bit more of a structure and a little bit more of a streamlined process to be able to coordinate among ourselves. Which leads a lot of this type of engagement. The only caveat to the operational ways of doing or ways of being is that the network has made a decision from its very onsets, from its creation, that it does not take political positions. So for example, the network will decide, there are members who will say, we have a letter campaign that we'd like to do about a specific topic that relates back to women, peace, and security. The steering committee may support in the coordination of drafting this letter, reviewing that letter. Monique will create a sign-up sheet for folks to sign on, but the network in its name will not have signed on because, of course, we represent the 69 members who have a variety of experiences, a variety of perspectives, and perhaps differing and sometimes contradictory positions that are of various situations or intersections with women, peace, and security. So the network itself does not take position. It facilitates members to coordinate among themselves for advocacy positions. The only time the network has situated itself slightly in a more political position has been the Women, Peace, and Security Ambassador, where we have specifically, of course, advocated because it's directly to our network mandate, and also in terms of endorsing the fact that we want a national action plan on women, peace, and security. We have decided to engage on the Women, Peace, and Security Network and the Women, Peace, and Security National Action Plan. And for example, when we launch the second and third iterations of our action plan, the chair at the time, Beth Maruniuk, and then the chair at the third National Action Plan, myself, sat with the ministers and announced the National Action Plan, which are, of course, political moments in themselves. So we are not signing as a network on behalf of all membership. We facilitate members being able to sign on to campaigns and letters, for example. If we look at the next slide, you will see what some of our achievements are. We are actually very proud of a lot of the work that we've been doing. A lot of that is featured on our website. Some of the more recent examples of the work that we have achieved is, of course, our engagement with the Government of Canada as a recognized counterpart on women, peace, and security that has been now more than 14 years in the making of being recognized by Global Affairs Canada and now other departments as well, and government elected and appointed officials as the voice on women, peace, and security and the coordinating body for civil society. The formation of the WPS Advisory Group and how we co-chair this with Global Affairs Canada has been a very instrumental moment for us in legitimizing the monitoring role that our network has vis-a-vis the Government of Canada. The advocacy for the WPS ambassador and the fact that we were one of the only countries that even created a position on women, peace, and security in its foreign diplomatic corps was a very important, prideful moment for many of our network members. We have many publications. We usually coordinate one per year. Some years have been two because we've been extremely keen on what was happening within the government and the political landscape. And so we publish regularly analyses, usually edited volumes of edited publications where members contribute different chapters analyzing a specific area of women, peace, and security. Sometimes it's been in response to the national action plans. Sometimes it's been in response to the progress reports that are issued about the national action plans. Other times it was and has been about thematic areas. So for example, this photo you see in the top right-hand corner is our most recent publication that came out in November of 2025. It is in the context of women, peace, and security turning 25 years old, and reflecting on some of the feminist gains, but also the gaps that have emerged in the last 2.5 decades. We are very proud to have led the consultation process for civil society in the last 2 national action plans, the second and the third national action plans, and to be engaged heavily in the Women, Peace, and Security Focal Points Network, which is a government network of all governments who engage on women, peace, and security, and ideally have national action plans on women, peace, and security across the world. There's more than 106 members of that network. Canada is a member as a government entity, and we in 2020, Canada and Uruguay were co-chairs of that network, that international governmental network called the WPS Focal Points Network. And we were asked by Global Affairs Canada at the time to host many of the events through their engagement as co-chair. So we're very proud because this was one of our largest I think it was a year contract with Global Affairs Canada to be able to contribute significantly. And at that time, I think was one of the first engagements at the global level. We've done many other contracts with Global Affairs Canada. Most of our funding actually comes from these types of kind of ad hoc contracts with Global Affairs for different types of projects. Sometimes it's been through the Canadian Fund for Local Initiatives out of the New York office, working with advocacy at the UN. You can see that on our website. Other times it's more specific to Canada or specific to policy development and policy recommendations and research. Most recently and currently, we have a working group within our network that coordinates research that we've just produced and is pending approval on women's role in climate and disaster preparedness and recovery in the Indo-Pacific. So that relates back to the Government of Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy and how they implement women, peace, and security in the region. So this is something that has enabled us to continue to pay Monique, but also to produce research and advocacy with the government. We're very excited about some of the collaborations that we have done and continue to do that are more thematic, let's say. And so we have members of our network who coordinated and supported a recent webinar on the intersections with militarism and WPS, and specifically discussing NATO. We have, as you will see as you engage with the network, various members who have completely different relationships with the military infrastructure. Some are veterans from the Department of National Defense who are now retired, who have joined our network, who worked on women, peace, and security. Some of them are active peace oriented organizations that are very much anti-militarism and anti-NATO, and there is space for everyone in our network to be able to exchange on those various positions. We have in the recent years had an influx of members who are very proudly members of the LGBTQ community, including EGAL Canada, who now sits on our steering committee. And so we have opened up more opportunities to engage on that intersection. We held last year a webinar on queering, peace, and security, and we have an upcoming blog series of some members who are reflecting on the intersection between LGBTQIA+ rights and the WPS agenda. So we're excited about this. We have increasingly began collaborating with other civil society networks outside of our network. So for example, the Research Network on Women, Peace, and Security, which is an academic network out of the University of Ottawa, Queen's University, and Simon Fraser University. It is in its second iteration. It is funded by the Department of National Defense's MINDS program, but nonetheless, it's an independent network of academics working on peace and security. And so we have recently engaged with them, working, for example, on future-proofing the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. And you can see some of that on our website as well. And we have an upcoming book that will be published in October of 2026. It is a collaboration between Canada and the United States in response to the tensions, of course, across the border. And so this is a collaboration between our network and the U.S. Civil Society Working Group on Women, Peace, and Security that is primarily Washington-based. We have members of our network and members of their network who have collaborated together to co-author chapters about how Women, Peace, and Security has operated and continues to operate, or has not operated, in an increasingly polarized Canada and US landscape. And so that book will be coming as an official book by Routledge in October of 2026. It's the first time that we've done that type of publication that has been published externally and not through our work as a policy-oriented one. And then, of course, we do engagements with parliamentarians and the diplomatic corps. And most recently, in November of 2025, we held our second reception on Parliament Hill with senators primarily and some members of parliament. And it gives an opportunity to members to have FaceTime with government officials, both elected, appointed, and also those in the bureaucracy. If we continue on with what's on our agenda and what you can expect our continued commitment to the primary guiding mandate that we have, of course, of being a forum for discussion on WPS issues and monitoring again the Government of Canada's WPS implementation, including through the advisory group, which I've mentioned has a members meeting that we will be facilitating at the end of June. We are still at this time trying to figure out what we want to come to the table with in terms of areas of discussion. And so if that's an area that you're interested in, we have a working group called the CNAP 3 working group, which is internal to our network, which will be meeting on May 21st to discuss how we want to approach the next WPS advisory group meeting with Global Affairs Canada and other government partners. We also have policy analysis that is ongoing. As I've mentioned, we usually publish an annual publication in our recent strategic planning exercise, which we published in January of this year. We have committed to creating annual State of WPS reports, which is essentially our annual publication that will have different thematic areas for every year. And this year's thematic area is in response to increasing military spending and military attention to WPS given the current world order. And so you will hear later today, if you're able to join us at the members meeting, that we are going to do a call out for contributions as chapters for different perspectives around the current world order. We can expect continued engagements and dialogue with Canadian government officials, the new ambassador's office, whenever the vacancy is filled in the coming weeks, different government departments. We've often done briefings. We will be doing a briefing about the economic resilience and climate disaster relief research in the Indo-Pacific. We'll do a briefing to Global Affairs Canada in the coming weeks. Members of that working group will be leading it, and you're welcome to join the working group if you have not already, and that's an area of interest to you. We regularly engage with these types of briefings and often will distribute the opportunity to all members via our email list, and folks register and are able to join us. And you can, of course, expect to engage, and this is the area where we do most of the substantive work, engage in our working groups themselves. And so, as I've mentioned, the CNAP WPS Advisory Group working group that we have, a government's working group, if that's an area that you're interested in. We have an anti-racism working group that is going to be engaging on areas around decolonization and anti-racism within our network, but within the WPS space as a whole. We have a hybrid working group, which means that we have members that are members of our network, but also individuals who are not members of our network who are part of a Sudan working group led by 2 of our network members. This is the only network working group of this type where we have non-members of our network who are also part of that working group. It is intentional because of the Sudan crisis, and also to fill that gap within the coordination of civil society actors working on gender equality and Sudan. We also have other working groups that emerge primarily through ad hoc means because of responses to an upcoming activity, an upcoming thematic area. Sometimes they're created to coordinate an event or an activity. For example, we had a working group to coordinate the efforts in November, which were parliamentary focused, etc. So the working groups, my point is here that they are not static. They are always in flux, they're always emerging, and there are always new ones that are being created. And at any point, individuals can join working groups or candidates. We did not put the Finance Committee on this list, but you are absolutely welcome and encouraged to join the Finance Committee to support brainstorming on fundraising initiatives for the network. And as you've heard, we do not have consistent sources of funding for our network. And so we are consistently looking at fundraising opportunities and other engagements to be able to fundraise to keep Monique and sustain the operations of the network. So very quickly, I've also mentioned this a lot of times, we hope that as new members or members who are kind of re-emerging in our membership, that you join a working group. You can join many working groups. Joining a working group does not mean that you have to commit to anything at all. It means that you're simply interested and want to engage. You can join multiple of them: the governance working group, the finance working group, the CNAP working group, the anti-racism, the Indo-Pacific and climate research working group, Sudan working group, etc. The best way to get the most information in our network in our membership is through attending the monthly members meetings. This is always on the second Tuesday of the month at 1 p.m. Eastern. You may also, if you're unable to make it, we do distribute the notes, and they are in our newsletter that Monique coordinates. And so that is the secondary best way to get up-to-date information on a monthly basis from our steering committee and other members. And so we circulate this usually mid-month via our email list. And of course, other ways to participate is to contribute to initiatives. So as things get circulated, as call outs get sent out, you can contribute to analysis, publications, other advocacy engagements, sometimes briefings, etc. And for those of you who became members before March of 2026, you may consider joining the steering committee in other years, which is another way to be incredibly engaged within the network, because of course the steering committee oversees everyday operations. I'm going to pass it over to Monique to close us off.
Thank you, Katrina. Yeah, so all of that. You can find a lot of this information on our website, wpsn-canada.org. There is a whole public-facing section from the front page, but you can also go to the members area, which you'll find in the menu bar. The password is WPSN-Canada, all in lowercase. I know that is not very secure, but it's going to be quite the job to change that one day and get it to everybody. So that's what it is right now. In the members area, you can find links to our most recent newsletter, as well as an archive of previous issues, details about the next members meeting, current working groups, recent publications, anything of interest to members. The recording of this session will also be there once I have edited it. There's also the mailing list. You're all on the mailing list. If you're not receiving emails, please let me know. And you can always contact me at coordinator@wpsn-canada.org if you need anything at all, or just direction as to where to go with something if you're not sure. And you can contact Katrina at chair@wpsn-canada.org. You can also find us on social media. We're on LinkedIn. We're mostly on LinkedIn. We're also on Blue Sky and Instagram. And I mean, technically we have a Facebook page, but not really so much. And that's it.
So we're very excited to have you as network members, very excited to see some new faces as well. And just really grateful that you've chosen to dedicate some time to the Women, Peace and Security agenda and our network in itself, and really hoping that you will be able to engage in various ways. And as Monique has mentioned, we are always here and happy to answer questions and explore other ways to collaborate, because we are network member driven. And so initiatives come and go as network members choose to contribute in different ways. So excited to have you all here.